Welcome to our noon edition of Arirang News. Here are the stories making the headlines at this hour. The government is reassuring the public that it's doing whatever it takes to respond to the prolonged medical shortage crisis following the walkout by junior doctors. This includes giving out better incentives to doctors who remain at their posts. President Yoon also solidified the government's stance on strictly holding accountable those doctors who have been infringing their patients' right to life and health. It's final. With Nikki Haley out of the picture following Super Tuesday's results, President Joe Biden will have a rematch with former President Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. This is the first presidential rematch in Washington in nearly 70 years. U.S. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says the Fed does not seem to be ready to cut rates just yet. Meanwhile, stocks posted gains with the Dow Jones Industrial Average up more than 250 points at midday Wednesday. The government is doing whatever it takes to lessen the chaos caused by the medical personnel shortage since thousands of junior doctors have refused to come back to work. In an emergency meeting earlier today, officials said they would set aside 128.5 billion won, or around $96 million to roll out better response measures. That includes giving out more financial incentives and hiring more medical personnel. President Yoon also reiterated how he would not tolerate the doctors whose walkout is putting the lives of patients at risk. Oh Soo-young tells us more.
There is no tolerance for doctors who neglect their duties, infringing people's rights to life and health under the Korean Constitution. That's according to President Yoon on Wednesday, as thousands of junior doctors continue their illegal boycott against the government's plan to raise the number of medical students at universities. Chairing a meeting at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters, Yoon called on authorities to thoroughly implement measures to stabilize medical services, saying the government has some $96 million of contingency funds to ensure that emergency care and essential services remain in operation. Such measures involve a pilot project for nurses to support medical treatment, deploy military doctors, and support labor costs to recruit additional personnel. Also, Yoon said the so-called Big Five hospitals in the country will focus on treating seriously ill patients, while local general hospitals will tend to those in less critical conditions. These measures, he said, will help stabilize the medical system amid the ongoing crisis. Addressing his cabinet ministers earlier in the day, Yoon issued a strong warning, saying the doctors have put the lives and health of citizens at risk.
의사들의 집단 행동은 스스로 책무를 져버리는 일이며 자유주의와 법치주의의 근간을 흔드는 것입니다. 국민의 생명을 볼모로 하는 불법적인 집단 행동에는 법과 원칙에 따라 엄중히 대응할 수밖에 없습니다.
Yoon said as the state is constitutionally obliged to protect the lives and health of its citizens, doctors are licensed to carry out this heavy public duty. He asserted that doctors' own rights and freedoms also come with responsibility, shooting down claims that suspending medical licenses for an estimated 7,000 partaking in the strikes infringes on their rights. At the same time, the president appeared to extend a message of reassurance. While reiterating the need for reform to the healthcare system, he pledged to spare no investment and support to raise the capacity and quality of medical schools to meet global standards, and promised to actively heed voices from the medical community. Yoon also said authorities will address the laborious sacrifices of young resident doctors, restructuring the personnel system to provide optimal support for medical staff. According to the president, since the national health insurance was first introduced in 1977, the number of doctors has only grown by sevenfold, and the number of medical students 2.2 times, despite medical expenses having spiked over 500 times. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Another pressing concern here in the peninsula, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un called for strengthened preparations for war in an apparent move to counter the ongoing combined military drills conducted by South Korea and the U.S. The Korean Central News Agency reported Thursday that Kim visited a key military base the day before and ordered that practical, actual war training be intensified to improve combat capabilities. He said this would allow the regime to suppress enemies with overwhelming force and contain the slightest attempt by enemies to provoke war. On Monday, North Korea condemned Seoul and Washington's Freedom Shield exercise, which is still taking place, and warned that the allies will have to pay a price. To better respond to evolving North Korean threats, South Korea seeks to boost spending on strengthening its military power this year, specifically through its three-axis defense system. Officials also aim to boost arms exports so that South Korea becomes the fourth largest seller in the world. Peunji explains.
South Korea plans to spend more than $5 billion this year on building overwhelming military power to counter North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. This is a 12% budget increase compared to last year. Announcing this on Wednesday, the country's Defense Acquisition Program Administration said the budget will be used to deploy a next-generation Aegis destroyer and a 3,000-ton strategic submarine, as well as to develop a long-range surface-to-air missile for a layered missile defense system. These are the key weapons needed for the country's so-called three-axis defense system, a strategy for the country's military to respond to an attack from the north. It includes first, preemptively striking North Korea's nuclear missile sites, second, intercepting the North's missiles, and third, mass retaliation against North Korea following an attack on the south. The budget will also be used to strengthen space power. After launching its first military spy satellite late last year, the country aims to put 2 more satellites into orbit by the end of this year. This is part of South Korea's efforts to boost the independent monitoring capabilities of North Korea, as the satellites are expected to help reduce the heavy reliance on U.S. satellite imagery. Meanwhile, the country also aims to spend about $1.8 billion to develop new military technologies, focusing on fields such as artificial intelligence and quantum technology. The government said it aims to become the world's 7th advanced country in military technology by 2027. And also by 2027, South Korea aims to become the 4th largest arms exporter in the world. To achieve this, the government said it aims to reach $20 billion in arms exports this year. Peunji, Arirang News.
Seoul urged Pyongyang to end its nuclear activities as well as its military cooperation with Moscow. South Korean ambassador to Austria, Ham Sang-wook, who was taking part in Wednesday's International Atomic Energy Agency regular board meeting held in Vienna, called on North Korea to immediately stop its illegal nuclear development and comply with the IAEA safety measure obligations. Ham said the North is seriously undermining peace and stability on the Korean peninsula and globally by emphasizing its policy of strengthening its nuclear weapons in its constitution. He also said that Pyongyang's military cooperation with Moscow clearly shows that the security of the Korean peninsula and Northeast Asia is inseparable from the security of Europe and the international community as a whole. Now on to how the government is responding to more local demands. President Yoon Suk-yeol said he would create a new rail line in Incheon City by 2030 to reduce commute times to and from the capital to just 30 minutes. Yoon was speaking as he visited Incheon for a policy discussion with citizens on Thursday on how to develop the seaport and airport city further. He added the city will become better connected, making cities such as Busan and Mokpo reachable in around 2 hours by train. He also shared his vision of creating landmark attractions in Incheon to utilize its advantage as a, quote, gateway to and from Korea. Yoon also took the opportunity to assure citizens that the merger between South Korea's 2 main airlines, Korean Air and Asiana, will not negatively affect consumers, especially in terms of its mileage system. Now on to economics. Amid soaring fruit and vegetable prices, the cost of eating out in South Korea is increasing much faster than the overall inflation rate. According to Statistics Korea on Thursday, prices of vegetables for February saw an on-year increase of 12%, which is the highest since March 2023. This is mostly attributed to a drop in supply as harvest areas were hit with heavy snow. Fruit prices also surged by 40% last month. The government has pledged to inject some $15.4 million to lower prices and reduce the burden for consumers. For the first time in nearly 70 years, the U.S. will have a presidential rematch. U.S. Republican presidential candidate nominee Nikki Haley is no longer in the race, losing more than 20 other contests to Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump. Haley's exit has cleared the stage for a Trump-Biden rematch in November's election. Yeon reports.
But the time has now come to suspend my campaign. I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that. I have no regrets. And although I will no longer be a candidate, I will not stop using my voice for the things I believe in.
On Wednesday, the morning after Super Tuesday, Nikki Haley, the former South Carolina governor and ambassador to the United Nations for a period during Donald Trump's presidency, ended her race for the White House. She won the primaries in Washington, D.C. on Sunday and Vermont on Super Tuesday, but lost more than 20 other contests to Donald Trump. On Super Tuesday alone, Trump won 14 of the 15 Republican nominating contests. Bowing out, Haley emphasized that it was important to continue U.S. global leadership. She had said throughout her campaign that the United States must help Ukraine against Russian aggression, which goes against Trump's stance on foreign affairs. She did not endorse Donald Trump, which means her supporters will now likely have to choose between the former and incumbent presidents in November. Just as Haley was conceding the race, Trump posted on social media that she had been trounced on Super Tuesday before inviting her supporters to back him. However, the Democrats' presidential frontrunner Joe Biden praised Haley for daring to speak the truth about Trump and extended his own invitation to her supporters. Haley's exit sets up a rematch between Donald Trump and Joe Biden in the November election, which will be the first repeat U.S. presidential contest since 1956. Both candidates have faced criticism, with Biden's age and Trump's legal issues, something that voters will be left to ponder. 이은진, Arirang News.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell once again hinted interest rate cuts are on the way amid a backdrop of economic uncertainty and concerns over a commercial real estate-driven banking crisis. Shin Se-byuk has the details.
U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has indicated potential interest rate cuts in 2024. Testifying before Congress on Wednesday, Powell reaffirmed plans to cut interest rates within the year, though he did not pin down an exact timeline.
If the economy evolves broadly as expected, it will likely be appropriate to begin dialing back policy restraint at some point this year.
Despite this, Powell adopted a cautious approach regarding rate reductions, emphasizing that the 2% inflation target has not yet been met.
But the economic outlook is uncertain, and ongoing progress toward our 2% objective for inflation is not assured.
The Fed chair also noted that the U.S. economy is showing no sign of an imminent recession, saying that restoring price stability and achieving maximum employment must come before lowering interest rates. Powell's remarks at the December 2023 FOMC meeting, which were made public in January, suggested an end to the aggressive rate hike policy the U.S. has been following. At that time, FOMC officials anticipated 3 rate cuts, each by a quarter percentage point by the end of 2024, while the actual policy path would depend on how the economy evolves. Following Powell's testimony, U.S. stocks closed higher on Wednesday, breaking a 2-day losing streak on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average saw a 0.2% rise. The broader S&P 500 index advanced by 0.5%, and the Nasdaq Composite climbed by 0.6%. Meanwhile, concerns over a U.S. banking crisis triggered by commercial real estate issues were addressed by Powell as well. This was in the context of shares in holding bank New York Community Bancorp dropping nearly 40% on Wednesday, following news that the bank had downgraded to below investment grade due to bad commercial real estate loans and was attempting to secure new funding. Powell acknowledged this as a significant challenge, but reassured that it was manageable and unlikely to impact the wider economy significantly. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Starting Thursday, the Digital Markets Act will be fully implemented in the European Union to regulate large tech companies. A total of 6 tech giants, including Apple and Facebook's parent company, Meta, will now need to comply with this law. Park Gun-woo has this report.
The Digital Markets Act, regulating tech giants from abusing their market-dominating power, starts its full application in all 27 European Union nations from Thursday local time. On the first day, the European Commission will be receiving reports from the 6 regulated companies designated as gatekeepers on what measures they have taken to comply with the law. Those 6 gatekeepers are Amazon, Apple, Google parent Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft, and TikTok owner ByteDance. Based on the reports, companies will be evaluated on whether they are following the law, and if they are considered to be obeying it insufficiently, an investigation will be launched immediately. Under the law, which aims to make the digital market fairer and more contestable, the EU has set obligations on 22 services the gatekeepers operate, which include operating systems, social media, search engines, app stores, and online advertisements. One of the biggest changes under the law is the requirement for gatekeepers to allow third parties to interoperate with their own services. For example, iPhone users in the EU will be able to download applications from outside Apple's App Store. The DMA also bans companies from giving preferences to their own services. In this case, the Google Flights button that appears at the top of search results will now be removed when users search for plane tickets on Google. Companies violating obligations could face hefty fines, up to a maximum of 20% of their overall annual turnover earned globally for repeated infringements. Pundits forecast that the EU's Digital Markets Act could possibly become the standard for regulating big tech companies in other countries in the near future. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
2 crew members of a cargo ship passing through the Gulf of Aden have been killed by Houthi rebels, marking the first civilian death since the group began attacking ships passing through the Red Sea. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Iran-backed Yemen-based Houthi rebels have been attacking commercial ships passing through the Red Sea since November last year in what they say is retaliation for Israel's war in Gaza. On Wednesday, these ongoing attacks resulted in the first civilian deaths. According to both U.S. and British officials, 2 crew members of a commercial ship were killed and 6 others injured in a strike by the rebel group using an anti-ship ballistic missile. The Greek-owned Barbados-flagged ship was hit approximately 93 kilometers off the coast of Yemen's port of Aden, with crew members forced to abandon the ship. A shipping industry source who spoke on the condition of anonymity said that the U.S. and Indian warships attempted to rescue the crew, but 3 remain missing. The Houthis later claimed responsibility for the attack, which U.S. officials say was their 5th missile attack in the past 2 days. A Houthi spokesman said the targeting operation came as the ship's crew rejected warning messages from Yemeni naval forces. Since November last year, the rebels have been launching drones and missiles against international commercial shipping, arguing that they're responding to Israel's war in Gaza. The attacks have disrupted global shipping, forcing shipping companies to take longer and more expensive routes around southern Africa. And despite international condemnation and a call to end hostilities in the Red Sea, the Houthis said they won't stop until the aggression is stopped and the siege on the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip is lifted. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
From unmanned aerial military vehicles to drone racing sports, cutting-edge drones are front and center at the 2024 Drone Show Korea. You can get a glimpse of how the future might look at the largest drone show in Asia, being held this week here in the port city of Busan. Our An Sung-jin takes us through.
A boundless expansion of drones. This is the theme of the 2024 Drone Show Korea, the largest of its kind in Asia. The 3-day event held in the city of Busan caters to more than 200 drone-related businesses from 10 different countries, including China, the Czech Republic, and the U.S. Hosted by the Trade and Transport Ministries as well as other governmental organizations, the show aims to act as a platform that connects the private, public, military, and education sectors to establish a drone industry ecosystem.
We are focusing here in the Korea for another partnership and cooperation with drone companies, but also the research institutes and authorities. So we are also in the central of the Europe, and I think it is a very good access point to the Europe market also for the Korean companies. So we are here to strengthen this cooperation and together develop this drone industry.
Domestic drone-related private companies showcased how drones can be commercialized and used in everyday life. It displayed the latest technologies in urban air mobility as a monitoring system for vehicle safety and traffic management.
When first developed, drones were manually controlled.
Now, this VR mock flying simulation shows one of the technologies from South Korea's defense industry, which uses artificial intelligence. The integration of drones in the defense sector is expected to grow as AI-based manned and unmanned combat systems are developed further. It also presented the use of high-altitude unmanned aerial vehicles, which are now in mass production.
As the number of military personnel is expected to decrease over time, the operation area that one person has to cover will increase. In such cases, this can be replaced by drones to increase efficiency.
The exhibition also promoted various drone entertainment, such as drone racing VR, drone football esports, drone basketball demonstrations, and other displays. South Korea's drone market is expected to reach more than $1 billion in market value by 2030. As the government stresses the need for sufficient R&D and infrastructure, the framework for necessary regulations will be critical in advancing the drone industry. An Sung-jin, Arirang News, Busan.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In Ukraine, a Russian missile strike hit the Black Sea port of Odessa on Wednesday during a summit between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis. The attack was reportedly roughly 500 to 800 meters from the leaders, close enough for them to see and hear it. The Russian Defense Ministry said its troops successfully hit a hangar housing Ukrainian naval drones in the port. The recent attack comes a few days after 12 people, including 5 children, were killed by a Russian drone strike on Odessa. The Ukrainian and Greek leaders visited the building hit in that earlier strike to pay tribute to the victims. Zelensky accused Russia of not caring who they target and called Moscow a terrorist army. In Egypt, amid an economic crisis that has gripped the country for more than 2 years, a new bailout agreement worth $8 billion was signed with the International Monetary Fund. The agreement is an expansion of a $3 billion fund facility agreed in December 2022. The deal came after the Egyptian Central Bank announced it would let its pound currency trade freely and delivered an interest rate hike of 600 basis points to stabilize the economy. As part of the new deal, Egypt will receive an additional $1.2 billion from a separate facility promoting environmental sustainability. The Egyptian economy has been severely impacted by several factors, including years of government austerity, the COVID-19 pandemic, fallout from the war in Ukraine, and most recently, the conflict in Gaza. In Haiti, armed gangs are seeking to oust the country's Prime Minister, Ariel Henry. The U.S. State Department, responding to claims that Washington was trying to persuade the Haitian Prime Minister to resign, has said that this is not the case. Rather, the State Department spokesperson said on Wednesday it's calling for Henry to expedite the transition to an empowered and inclusive governance structure that will move with urgency to help the country prepare for a multinational security support mission. The mission, backed by the United Nations but stalled for months, would aim to address the nation's security situation and pave the way for free and fair elections. The comments come after the Miami Herald had earlier reported that U.S. officials called Henry mid-flight when he was returning to Haiti via the U.S. to persuade him to step aside. In Mexico, a group of protesters demanding answers about the 43 college students who disappeared in 2014 broke down the door of the presidential palace with a truck on Wednesday. Several demonstrators were stopped by military police before reaching the hall where Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador was holding a news conference. A decade ago, the students' disappearance from a teacher training college shocked the country. According to Mexican government officials and United Nations reports, it led to a state cover-up and abuses during the investigation into their disappearance. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. More wet and cloudy weather is in store for central regions and Gyeongsang-do areas. Mountainous regions in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-puk-do could see up to 5 centimeters of snow. Nearby inland regions could see up to 3 centimeters. Stay safe on the roads. Meanwhile, the capital area could see spotty showers, but all the precipitation should let up tonight. Then colder air will drop temperatures to below norms. Get ready for the sub-zero morning temperatures through the weekend. Afternoon highs should be 1 to 5 degrees lower than yesterday, topping out at 8 degrees Celsius in Seoul, 10 degrees for most of the southern provinces this afternoon. Those in Jeollado provinces could have brighter skies than other parts of the country. After a brief sprinkle this weekend, we are expecting more spring-like temperatures under sunnier skies. Until then, take care not to catch a cold. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for you at this hour. We'll bring you more updates at the same time tomorrow.